He says, I'll never get that time back. As soon as he said, that's another punch to the chest moment. I said, I'm fucking never touching it again.
Today's guest is Arjun Dingra. He's a 2-time world champion martial artist. He's a mortgage leader. And I would even go as far as saying you're an extreme mortgage influencer. You're the founder of LFG Energy, and it's a society as well. You built this amazing community. You're a community leader. But one of the things that sets you apart from most people that are creating these communities is that you've really invested in this personal development, and that being the difference between someone being stuck to really stepping up to the next level. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about breakthrough. We were lucky to do this. So thank you for being here live in Gilbert, Arizona for this podcast.
I appreciate you, brother. And dude, anything for you. And I love spending time with you. You know how much love and respect and admiration I have for you, everything you build and what you do for our industry, man. So this is a gift.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll tell you, seeing you on stage and watching, just like, I think you and I did this podcast a couple of years ago,
right?
And watching your transformation, not just as a leader and influencer, but seeing what you've created and how you're speaking, man, it's next level. You've grown so much in a time that, we haven't like done this again. So I think you're one of the very few that I've done a second podcast with, but I wanted to do it. I thought it was like, this would be really good. I want to hear your story, man. So I want to jump into it. So Arjun, before you started building this community that you've built with LFG, and I want to talk about that. I think people are probably going to have some interest at the end of this on how to connect with you. And I want to be able to give them that if they listen through this, and how to connect with you. But before you did that, even before you went to mortgage space, was there a personal breakthrough situation that happened that, your back was against a wall? There was some decision making that you had to make that was going to really push you and catapult you to break through the next level.
Yeah, there's been a bunch, and they're all kind of actually deep in the history. It's not like there was a moment right before the moment or something that happened right before everything turned. I feel like it's all kind of been this chain of events that have happened. And I'm somebody who goes through life because I got asked this question by a therapist in 2014. She said on the first session, it was kind of a homework assignment. She said, can you define what it is to be happy or unhappy? Or like what kinds of people are one or the other? She's like, I want you to think about that. So I had a week until the next session. And then I came back and the answer I had was that there's 2 kinds of people in this life. Those that go through life expecting and those that go through life noticing. If you notice what's going on all around you and you've been paying attention over time, right? Because we're all this like book of history. Then there are things that you're going to draw from. There are things that you should draw from. There are things that you should have paid close attention to. And you'll never actually be unhappy. You'll always be really present and happy. It's those of us that go through life expecting. I expected this reaction and therefore this was a disappointment. Or I expected that I'd be in a different spot. Or I expected I'd be married by now and have kids and therefore I'm like a failure. Like that's the recipe for unhappiness. So I shared that with her and I've just always tried to really live my life that way. I still do. And anytime I feel like I'm out of whack, because sometimes we lose our way, I come right back to it and remind myself, no, you're going through life noticing. Because there's so many key moments. And there's one in particular that everything really has shifted now because I re-tapped into it. And it goes back to being a kid. And every summer, so, you've had, a lot of your listeners know who my siblings are, right? Neil and Shivani. We're all together. But even before Shivani was born, because Shivani and I are 8 years apart, we spent every summer as kids going to India.
Okay.
This is how our parents connected us with our culture, with our grandparents, with our cousins, and the heat. I didn't know what heat was until that's how I learned about heat. It's like 110 degrees with full humidity, like full humidity. It's not like Arizona heat.
Yeah.
Different. So we'd be there, and I was very close to all my grandparents, but in particular, growing up, I was close to my mom's side because they spoke English. And Neil and I, still being young, we didn't speak Hindi yet. We'd kind of starting to understand it, and that's what my dad's parents only spoke. They could understand a little bit of English, but they couldn't speak.
That's hard.
So we didn't have it was hard to connect with them, right? And so we were kind of closer with my mom's side of the family growing up. It changed in the end. Became very close to them, almost equally. But my grandmother in particular, who is the kindest human being, I get really emotional every time I think about her and talk about her. She's always with me, but she was the kindest human being I've ever met in my life, and I'll probably ever know. Very selfless. And she would volunteer at this hospital. And if you think back to that time in India, societal roles, there's a very big gap between male and female rights and acceptance, and women just worked or just stayed at home. Like they didn't work, you know, let alone forget about volunteering. But my grandmother would volunteer 2 days a week at a hospital for like an entire afternoon. And I'd be so mad as a kid, I remember, and I called her Nani. That's what you call your mom's mom. I said, Nani, why do you have to go? Like, I'd be so pissed and disappointed as a kid. I remember sometimes even crying. I didn't want her to leave because I just wanted to hang out with her and my cousins and everyone else and just keep everyone together. So she has this long driveway, and she would get into a rickshaw to go to the hospital. And, I mean, it was really old world. Like what you envision of India, that's what it was like in New Delhi. But there was this one walk, which has changed me forever. We were walking down the driveway. She was holding my hand. I must have been about 7 years old because my sister wasn't born yet. And she was born when I was 8, and then we went back with her when she was a babe, like a newborn. And I said, Nani, why are you going? And she says, listen, I go because it's the right thing to do. And I still, even just saying that, like my voice trembles a little bit, I still feel this punch in the chest of like, this is what life is. You're supposed to be in service to others. You're supposed to give a shit. You do things because it's the right thing to do, not because it's in your best interest. Here's a grandmother who wants to spend time with her daughter, my mom, and her grandkids, who she sees once a year for 2 months every summer. That's it, you know? So you would think, like, I'm not volunteering for these 2 months that they're here. I'm not going to go. But she still does because it's the right thing to do. And when I think back to any breakthrough I've had in business, building teams, furthering the organization, starting the community, as you said, it all comes back to that, like being in service to others, going the extra mile, doing something extra, even when it wasn't convenient, even when it financially didn't make sense, because it's the right thing to do. Because I just keep hearing those words. So that, to me, was the real pivotal moment that I look back on. There's others, of course, and everyone who's listening, you've got them in your history, something that was said or a moment, maybe it was a devastating moment that changed your life or, you know, altered the trajectory of it. We've got multiple ones, but that for me was the most pivotal in all of them. There's been others.
It hit you right at that moment when she said it. Like at that moment, you didn't feel, it's a selfish thought to say, hey, be with me. I don't want you to go, right? When you really think about it. But when she said it, it changed the way you look at the world in terms of,
not necessarily so much in that exact moment. Yeah. I mean, it hit me because I understood her.
You understood it at that moment.
At that moment, I understood who my grandmother was and why she's this incredible human. And then it changed the light. It put her in a different light for me, even at that young age. And then it just grew from there with so much more love and admiration and respect and adoration. But for me, it was like, it's now when I look back on it, I'll sometimes, even without connecting the dots, I'll connect it after the fact, and I'm doing something like, you'll ask yourself and check in with yourself, like, man, we just did a great thing, or we just did this. Like, where did I find the time and the energy for that? Or how was I able to do that? Or why did I do it? And a lot of times the roads all lead back to that moment. I'll think back to that, and I'll remember, I'm like, yeah, that's why I give a shit. That's why I do so much for people. Even giving the shirt off my back to people, even when it doesn't even make financial sense. Sometimes it's been to my own detriment, but I can't change who I am now. You know, this feels too much within the alignment of who I am. It's congruent to my core. It's congruent to my ancestry, to that moment with my grandmother. So I just haven't stopped, and that's what it comes back to, is that moment.
Well, it's an amazing thought process because, you know, if we take today for an example, you know, I reached out to you a few weeks ago and asked you to do a speaking event, and you literally dropped everything to be out here, and you know, you covered your own, you know, hotel. You know, you were just like, you were really truly being in service to the community here that needed to hear the message you had today. And sometimes I think to myself, like, man, I know this is a huge ask of Arjun to do this, but you always seem to be willing to step up. So, you know, this is, I'm curious about this piece of it with, you know, what you've created with this community. So tell me a little bit about the society that you built. LFG, right? What does it stand for? And your approach to it is very different than most masterminds, most communities. Most communities are, if you come in our community, we're going to put you with like-minded people that are essentially going to help you grow your business. That's not necessarily the direction that you're taking, although that could be the end result.
Sure.
You're taking this evolution of human behavior and how people can better themselves through your mastermind. The speakers you bring in don't talk about necessarily the same things that you always hear. You are very, very intentional about this. But tell me a little bit about that thought process. But more importantly, what I want to get to, Arjun, is why. Like, why did you build the society the way that you built it, and that with that messaging specifically?
So it was about 2 years ago, actually a year and a half ago. I was turning 45 that year, and I called 45 halftime because, well, you and I were joking about this today, that we both have intentions of living well beyond 100.
Yep.
At that time, I wasn't in that frame of mind because there's so many things that could be out of your control in terms of health or what may happen in the world. But I figure I'm 45 years old. It's halftime. If I make it to 90, anything beyond that, I'm playing with house money. So it's time to take some stock in what my life has been up to this point in terms of a culmination of connections and relationships and impact. And what do I want the next 45 to mean? Because it's different now. Now I'm taking stock, and at that time, I had a newborn daughter and then a 4-year-old. And I thought, okay, how do I want them to see their dad? Because I look up to my parents so much for so many things, and they're still teaching me in their own ways. And I want to make sure I have that impact on them too. So I thought, okay, what do I want my life to really mean? And then I go back to that moment with my grandmother, because it's the right thing to do. And then I think about my mantras about being in service to others, forcing my relevance, in a good, sincere way that's going to have impact. And then I thought, that's it. I just want to have impact. I want to make sure that every life or interaction I come into contact with, every hand I shake, I somehow leave that dynamic better than when I approached it. Because that, to me, is the definition of a good friend. If you and I are sitting here and you feel more inspired or more moved or more motivated to do something or just more optimistic and euphoric about life as a result of me having spent time with you, then I'm a good friend.
Absolutely.
And the same in reverse, which is why I consider you a good friend. I always feel better about everything when I talk to Chris.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Because you're always optimistic. You see the glasses half full. You see the opportunity in things. And as I've gotten older, that's kind of been my tribe of who I'm like really drawn towards. I've almost narrowed things in terms of who I keep close. It's just like-minded people, right? Maybe that's something that we get in our mid to late 40s and approaching 50, is that it just takes on new meaning now. And we recognize that time and energy is so finite and moments are rare and you don't want to take anything for granted. So I thought about all this, and then literally I had a big event on the books that was coming on with Ryan Serhant.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? It's going to be a little bit of a different event this time. It's going to be more of a mastermind style. So smaller group, 150 people only. It was higher ticket. It was tough because the market was really shifting, so it was really hard to implore people to invest in themselves at such a high dollar amount, when they were like losing every transaction. So it was challenging, but then I knew that I needed to create something with this moment because this was going to be an opportunity. We're going to have the right people there, Ryan's endorsement, a lot of other great, incredible speakers, people from his company were all going to be there, and others as well, influential in the space. David Meltzer, all kinds of people were at that event. It's crazy how we got them all and managed to do it all in a day. A little bit of a stretch. Going back, I wouldn't do it that way again. But I thought, okay, I'm going to need to get this all together somehow, and I need to come up with something.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it, and then I thought, you know what? Okay, I want to start a community. I've always wanted to start one. I want to have one that has impact. I don't want it to be like the other ones. One, because I'm not trying to copy or reinvent the wheel with them. I'm a part of so many great masterminds and communities like the one we're in together, and which is how we've really become closer connected, right? Like Neil's mastermind's incredible. I'm part of so many other ones, and they're all great. As you said, there's a very large focus or heavy shading on tactically, we're going to teach you this and it's going to make you better in business, or it's going to result in the bottom line. So there's enough of those. I don't want to compete in that space because I'm still a student of those masterminds and I want to stay that way. I love learning and growing. But I wanted to do something else, and I looked out there and what's missing, right? And the focus on the mind and the heart, there's a massive void or absence of it. We're also focused on tactical work. Do this, do that, make your calls, do this, post this video, share this bit of content, get out there, spend this much money, and you'll be great. Yeah, you'll be great financially. But if you're no good here and here, it's short-lived, it's going to be empty, it won't have any real longevity to it. There won't be legs behind it. And at the end of the day, what are we doing, right? Are we just doing stuff for the sake of being transactional? Or are we doing things because we want to help, because we want to grow ourselves, be better, leave our communities, leave our interactions better than when we approach them? So I said, okay, well, let me look at the word society. And what does that mean? It's a society, by definition, is like the collaborative efforts of all of its members to lift it or elevate it.
Yeah.
Right?
I never look at like you always got to go back to the definition and you find like a deeper meaning of this word that we throw around all the time.
I thought about it, and it actually, the word was suggested to me by one of the guys that was on our media team at the time. And he said he liked that word. And then I looked into it, and I'm like, actually, that word makes a lot of sense, because that would be this. Everyone's got a story that's so interesting, right? And it can lift others. We go to masterminds and we can absorb content, and it's amazing and it's great. For those that take advantage of it and do it the right way, and you're one of those people, you squeeze it for all the juice and some. But a lot of these people that we're interacting with are like decades or centuries. They're like in another stratosphere in terms of where they're at in their life. Yes, they're being generous and sharing, and we're learning from them, but we're not on the same level as any of these people. And that's a good thing, because that's how you learn, right? You want to learn from people that have done it or they're way out there. But I thought, oh, there's so much actually to be learned from this right here. You and I sitting next to each other. Two brothers, two people that are going through life, that have struggled and learned and adjusted and taken losses, had wins. I could learn a heck of a lot from talking to you, maybe even more. And you're right here. We're right here with each other. We're on the same level, right? Or maybe a little bit of separation, you know? It's just more realistic. So I thought a society could contain that. There could be an impact on business, of course, but we would just want to focus on everyone's betterment as a person, as a human, how they're evolving, where they are in their mind and their hearts. And then, you know, we would have speakers that speak to this. You know, they're successful entrepreneurs in their own way, and sure, they could open up the book on how they made their millions and how you could do it too. Great. They also provide that kind of value and context and content in every other mastermind that they speak to. I want to talk about when they were down and out, or when they felt like quitting.
It's almost like the identity of this podcast.
Yes.
Is like really understanding when you were down and out.
When did it shift? Yeah.
When did it shift? Yeah, that's so funny, because we've never talked about this, but that's almost an identical mantra, which I love about it, because that's what attracts me to what you're doing and how you lead. I mean, I think, you know, one of the things that I noticed about you, and I told you this on the first podcast we did, and most people who are listening to this might not have heard it, but the three that did, sorry, I'll repeat it. But Shivani had said something to me one time. She said, and Shivani's your sister, and she said, Arjun is the most emotionally mature person I've ever talked to, right? And that's why that was like one of the things that she can always count on you, is that you can always, you know, get her through some of these things. And at that moment, I had never looked at you in that light. And when I did, it's like a whole nother world of an individual opened up a door to you that I just didn't realize. So then I started noticing it in your content and as we spoke and, you know, all those things. And I was like, that is an area that I can tap into with him that I might not have in the beginning, because I think a lot of times we all need this industry is very emotional, and it's very transactional from, you know, every day we're trading emotion with the person we're talking to. And how do you get better at that? And so as I talk to you, I'm observing and I'm looking at that. And then I watched you build a society around this, right? So you're taking like this passion you have and how you help other professionals develop, you know, emotionally, and then you're giving them, you know, an outlet to come and be a part of it. Is that, am I grabbing
That's
that
it.
right?
Yeah. And also to add to that, giving them the opportunity to share their story. Because a lot of people don't get that opportunity when they're a part of the community. They're just there to kind of sit.
How does that work
and
exactly?
student and learn. So we, you know, through our meetings and our collaborations, you know, I will spotlight people and I'll almost pull it out of them. You know, like I want to hear their story. You know, like I know that you beat cancer, you know, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that mindset. And when did you ever feel like you were going to die? Did you feel scared that was a possibility? Like most people who get diagnosed probably do. They think, they hear the C word and they're like, I'm going to die. Like, what was that like? What was it like? You know, and there was one particular guy in our group. He said this and I started crying right when he said it, because he only has one daughter and she's in junior high school, and he just beat cancer a couple years ago. But he said this, and his daughter obviously being at a very formative age when she probably needs a dad more than any other time in her life, right? Those years. This is very important. And he said, I got the diagnosis. I thought I was going to die. I went home and I looked at my wife and daughter, and I had to talk to my wife first. I wasn't sure how I was going to tell my daughter. And I couldn't tell them anything because the only thing I could think of when I stared at them was that I can't leave them. And like when I heard him say this, my eyes welled up because like every dad, I mean, that's how we'd all feel, right? I can't leave them. I'm not done yet, right? So I heard him say that, and I mean, that's the kind of story that we get out of people, right? Because that lifts and inspires people. And again, it's part of that whole thing where we feel really close to like those that we have a lot more in common with, and we feel like we're on the same level, and there's so much to be learned from that. So yes, all the things that you said are what the society entails, but this element too of I want everyone else to be able to share their story and lift others and give them a platform because maybe they've never felt safe to be vulnerable like that, or that their story even meant anything. But to me, it does. It means a lot because I learn from other humans every day. And so I want them to feel that because I just feel like that's just part of the whole human gift of an experience.
It really is. I mean, I can't think of it's a funny thing, but I usually find ways to stay away from those topics.
Yeah.
And I think most people do.
Right.
But then, that's my immediate reaction. But then I realize that every time that I feel myself wanting to stay away from it, that's my cue to lean into it and really push a little bit further. Arjun, did you have something that happened to you where, you told that story about your grandmother, but did anything ever happen with you where you yourself had your back against a wall from a mental health perspective, or something that's really given you maybe an inspiration to really help others around it? Like where do you, is there anything that ever, that you think of that you're like, that moment, if I didn't have the strength to see this through, I can see how most people would have quit, or most people would have given up, or, have you ever lived through that?
I have, with the loss of certain people, like friends, like, again, these are all like milestones, or like it's part of the history book, for Arjun Dingra.
Did you lose somebody close to you?
I've lost a few, unfortunately, especially a lot in recent years to substance abuse, addiction. I lost my best friend, who I've referenced so many times, but I channeled it into a way that gave me so much purpose.
Well, hold on. I didn't know about this, sorry.
Yeah.
But you lost your best friend.
I did. So I lost him to suicide 20-something years ago. So there's a group of friends that I have known since middle school. They're the seven. We're the seven. There's seven of us. They'll always be. We're down to six physically because we lost one. But this guy was the best looking guy, the most athletic. He was the state football player of the year. Incredible dude. We were so close. And I have these beautiful memories with him because our last year of college, he went and studied abroad in Italy. And this was my senior year, right before I got in the mortgage industry. And I maxed out my credit card to get a ticket to go see him for spring break so that I could go there. I literally went with like a few bucks in my pocket, and it was the greatest trip ever. We slept in hostels and on trains so that we could avoid paying for hotels or hostels, and traveled everywhere. And we saw like 4 or 5 cities in Italy, and it was just this beautiful time. But we were at the Colosseum in Rome. And now, mind you, the year is like 2001. So this is like Gladiator came out in 2000, so it's still very fresh, right? And it made the Colosseum like what it is in terms of this massive tourist attraction. Because
for people our age, it
was actually not a tourist attraction.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay,
everyone's told me this in Italy. It was actually just this decrepit thing that was just there. People would just walk by like, oh, it's the Colosseum. Then they turned it into something like, we can charge money and
that's awesome.
Have ticket sales and everything here for people to come see this. So he and I went to it, and we were sitting outside, like after we'd kind of toured it. And we did the really cheap tour because that's all we could afford. And then we were just sitting outside on this like rock looking up at it. And I think we grabbed like bottles of Coke. And we were just sitting there drinking Cokes. And that's the good Coke, the European Coke with real sugar, not the crap here. And we were staring at it, and we said, one day we're going to come back here with our families, or when we have money, when we can stay in hotels and we can actually live it, we're going to come back. I'm like, deal, man.
Yeah.
And I remember us like fist bumping, and we made this pact. Well, a year later, he took his own life because he got himself into debt. And I was with him the week before he did it, and we don't have to get into the story, but he never reached out. And I always say that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? But it's also a very dark place for people that are contemplating. So you got to check in on people. You have to be a good human, and just because somebody looks like they're doing okay, they may not be. So ask the question from time to time: how you doing? Are you okay? You good, Chris?
Yeah.
We all got to do that. That's a responsibility that we all have. So I lost him, and it was devastating. It still is. There's still things I think of him to this day because we were just so close. And that whole group of friends, the 6 of us, for many years, up until everyone had their own families, we'd get together once a year and just go on a boys' trip, and we'd just remember him. It was kind of our way of honoring him. and we're still very close to his mom. We told his mom that she may have lost a son, but she still has 6 others. You know, we're all her sons. Like, we stay that connected to her. It was actually just her birthday yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I reached out to her and told her that. But when I was competing in Taekwondo, fast forward it now, the final world championships that I competed in were in 2014. And they were supposed to originally be in Spain. And they moved it. They pulled it. And they announced, and I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. I'd lost the last one I'd done. I'd won the first one I'd done. So I won a gold medal and then lost in the first round.
Oh, wow. That's got to be like a really tough break.
Yeah, so it was, it taught me a lot. It was the best thing that happened to me as a setback, and that's another one, I could certainly share. But I remember, like, okay, we got one shot to kind of decide and kind of settle the score. Did you ever belong, or were you just kind of lucky? And only one time's going to settle the score. That's it. We're going to find out one way or the other. So they announced the World Championships have been moved to Rome, Italy. And then I literally went to bed, and I'll get goosebumps just thinking about it right now. I went to bed that night, and he literally came into my dreams, and he whispered to me, he said, oh, fuck, man, I still feel it every time. He said, meet me at the Coliseum. And I woke up that morning, remember where I was. I said, I'm going to fucking give everything now. That's it. Like, if there was a sign, and I'm a big believer in signs, man, and the universe sometimes talking to you, at that moment, the universe was shouting at me. If I didn't reach back, if I didn't listen, if I didn't scream back, it would have been a sin. It would have been an indictment on who I am. As a human, I said, let's fucking go. So I said, we're going for it. And I gave everything. I literally said, I will not get on that plane and ask myself, could I have done more? When I get on that plane, I'm going to be like, we're good. We're ready. It may not be completely in my control. There could be elements outside, but everything I've given, I've left no stone unturned, and I'll have no doubts, and I'm good with where things fall. And everything for that event lined up beautifully. I equate it to, I was literally like Michael Jackson in the Billie Jean video. I'm dating myself now. But you remember when he was walking, and then every step he took, the ground lit up?
Yeah, I remember.
That's the kind of magic that was running through me, leading up to it. I felt that magical.
Felt it, yeah.
Like, all these songs were like being played in airports at the time that I was using for inspiration. And I got to the airport and I'm here and I'm like, dude, there's a sign here. Like, and the crazy thing is I competed on the first day, but I'll back up one quick second here. The day before the event started, there was a picture that I had of him and I on our way to Rome the morning before we saw the Coliseum. We'd come from Rimini, which is this beach party town, and we'd taken a train into Rome. We took this picture, which I still have, of us sitting in we didn't even have train tickets. I don't know how we got on the fucking train. We were sitting in like the gallery area where you enter the cabins on our bags. We just put them on. We were just kind of sitting on it, reading a newspaper. Yeah. And we took this picture of us. Someone took it of us, and I have it. And I said, all right, the first thing I'm going to do before going to the hotel and meeting the team there to check in with everybody, I'm going to go to the Coliseum. I went to the Coliseum. I held up this picture. I took a selfie of that photo and me and the Coliseum in the back, and I sent it to his mom, and I said, promise kept. I kept the promise. And at that moment, I also felt like, dude, there's no way I'm losing. There's no fucking way I'm losing. And I remember getting up the morning of, because I knew I was going on day one, because the people in my age group go on day one, which is nice because you don't have to wait the full 7 days. Yeah. You can actually get it out of the way. And I got up that morning. I had my daily mantra that I say to myself, which is that everything in this that's happened to me in my life has prepared me for these moments. I live for these moments. I love these moments. I'm ready. I say that before anything big I do. And then I looked up and I said, there's literally nobody in the world that's beating me today. There's nobody in the world that's going to beat me today. It's not going to happen.
It happened.
And I won. And when it ended, they did the opening ceremony at the end of day one, not at the beginning, because they wanted to get the event going. And so as the first day is winding down, they do the opening ceremonies with all the countries and the flags. And they had these dancers come out, and they performed all this dancing to the Gladiator soundtrack.
Oh, wow.
And I just looked up. I was like, yeah, man, it's like, it's still with me, right? Like, that's why we came to Rome together. Like, this movie, like, it was just pure magic. But that moment has been so defining, and like doing it in the honor of, my friend, like it's meant that much. And I still think about things like that. So again, moral of the story is, or the point in everything is that you take certain things that you draw inspiration from and you can use them for fuel, sometimes unlimited fuel for things to get things done. But a lot of that full circle is what the society is all about. And I've shared that story with everyone in the society. I've shared it on my podcast in a solo episode because I wanted people to know that about me and like how my retirement went. Like it was a dream retirement and a dream ending. It couldn't have gone better. I couldn't have scripted it any better. I got to call my own shot. I'm saying this is my last one. I got to go out on top. I kept my promise to my friend. It was my first trip back to that city since I was there with him just many years before. And it was just a beautiful thing, man. And how it all came together.
It's crazy. I mean, do you think that your mindset on this, right? Like I was listening to tell the story, and some people could have been like, this moment, I lost a friend, get caught up in that, get sad about that. But you almost flipped it to the on the opposite end, is that you used it and it created this magical moment. Like you're literally walking down the street feeling like the tiles are lighting up.
Yeah.
Because you felt that energy from your friend with you, right? Do you think that, and it's an interesting thing, I find these parallels in people's stories that that maybe they don't see, but like to me, this is the exact reason why you created, like even as you were telling a story, you said, let's fucking go. But you've never tied that to, that's why you named it Let's Fucking Go Society. No. Or, that the society focuses on like a mental health aspect of it. So do you see the parallel in that? Or do you think that's why you did that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, at the end of the day, like I'm not the guy who coined the phrase. Tom Brady was saying it and it means different things to people. But I was saying it a lot when I'd coach guys or athletes. Let's fucking go. You guys ready? Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
We say it just kind of fires you up. It's an energy.
That literally So that's how I always took it.
Totally.
Right?
Right.
But then I hear the story and it's very different than that. It's a deeper meaning.
Much deeper.
Because there's this individual that's kind of followed you around, and kind of had your back and in a lot of ways created a magical moment for you that you allowed to happen because you opened up your heart to allow that to happen. Where most people don't. They focus on a negative and, but you truly like could have you could have lost and you could have just said it just wasn't my time and been okay with it.
Right.
But you were like, there's no way that somebody's beating me today.
I think that kind of attitude or that energy that people have to take on, like where Tony Robbins calls it the burning the boat strategy, right? If you want to take the island, you burn the fucking boats. There's no way out. We're taking the island. Like, I think that sense of urgency, that sense of finality is something that we all could use a little bit more of in terms of how we operate. Because for so many of us, the reason why something doesn't get achieved is because it didn't mean as much to us. We had one foot out the door, or we felt like safe if it doesn't work out. But what if you don't? What if you don't have a choice? Like you hear these stories of these Herculean efforts of like a parent lifting something that was so heavy off the leg of their child that's going to avoid them from like help them avoid death. And they're like, how did that happen? It's like, it's a miracle. No, it's actually, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
It's like literally saying like, I don't care what it's going to take. I will not be stopped right now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to make it through. I'm going to endure. I'm going to persevere. So that's what, it would come from that. It would come from being in arenas at world championships and like you're in the competitor warm-up area and you're staring at everyone, this guy's from Brazil, this guy's from Iraq, this guy's Colombian, like and I'm seeing all these guys and everyone's kind of like, sizing each other up. You're warming up, you're sweating and you look and then the draw comes out on the screen and you're like, I'm going against that guy first. I've been staring at him the whole time. And then you're like, for a second, you have a little bit of doubt, a little bit of fear, just it's normal. And then you look down as your face is like drenched in sweat from warming up and you're in this muggy warm-up area in a basement. You look down and at the stars and stripes that are on your jacket. And you say, you look up at this guy, you look at the stars and stripes, you say, let's fucking go. Like, I'm not going to be stopped today, man. And that's it. That's the energy. So when I created the group, I wanted everyone to be able to tap into that themselves, either through things that have happened to them in their life or using somebody else's story, to tap into it, because we all gain so much inspiration from each other.
Agreed. So, okay, so now let's go into everybody, the listeners right now, most of them are in real estate and lending.
Yep.
And you and I both know that if I take a random group of 20 people in real estate and lending, there might be 2 people that are crushing it and the rest are starving, right? So the rest need to have that LFG moment right this very moment. How do you for those people that you see that are out there, and you probably work with a few, right? Like,
Sure.
I mean, I know I work with a few, right? I manage 80 loan officers, and I know that there are loan officers right now that are right now, as you and I talk, might be watching TV. Like, they might not be doing what they should be doing, right? But it's because they're stuck. How do you inspire somebody to get unstuck?
Yeah. I think you have to, there's in leadership and in coaching, the most flawed approach is the one size fits all. That's what education is. Teachers teach a curriculum that was given to them, generally in the form of a manuscript or a book, and they just throw it out there. And they wonder why, which is so asinine, why half the kids maybe fall behind and a few succeed. I learned something when I was trying to become a much more effective coach in Taekwondo, is that you have to have a coaching philosophy. And it goes beyond just like what you want to accomplish. The philosophy is so deep, and the biggest part of it, the most important component, which all of us as leaders need to have, is to learn your learner. Know what the person who you are trying to help or trying to inspire, get unstuck, what is their, like, how do they respond to things? What's going on in their life? So I would get criticized for this a lot when I would be coaching. People would say, you're too friendly. You're too a lot of the authorities and the administrators in the group and some of the higher ups, the people that put me in the coaching position would say, you're a little too friendly with everybody. Like you're their friend and not their coach. I go, no, actually you're misinterpreting that. I have to understand this guy if I'm going to get through to him. I need to know what's going on in his life. I need to know what he's been through, what his home life is like. Maybe if I'm fortunate enough to even go deeper to even see what sort of childhood trauma was there. Because I need to know how I'm going to get the most out of him, what button I have to push, what's his response, which is going to be very different from his or very different from his. And I think we have to do that with performance when it comes to sales and operations, right? Learn your learner. And first of all, people want to be seen. It's one of the human needs, right? It's a condition of being a human. Like, you want to be seen, you want to be loved. Those two things are the most important, right? So your people will see you, and when they feel seen, they'll do anything for you. But more importantly, they'll do anything for themselves once they feel that. Sometimes that's the block. It's just to have been seen, to have been acknowledged. Like, somebody actually gives it. I'm not just a number here, and I'm supposed to produce for you so that you can drive the nice car, and that's why you're on my ass, because my sales numbers are low. That's how most people see it.
That's a really interesting thing. There is a resentment that comes from
Big
that
time.
too. Yeah,
Big time.
It's why people pay outside coaches to coach them, because they're like, internally they feel like it's self-serving.
There's an inherent distrust.
Yeah,
because they think, well, of
weirdest
course
thing.
You want to coach me.
How did this happen in our industry? But it is so funny. There's an inherent distrust. It's so funny.
I think, and that's, I guess, to be expected. When you say it the way you did, it makes sense, right? If there's inherent distrust, then I'm going to obviously trust his coaching over your coaching if I work for you. But if I feel seen by you and acknowledged by you, I'll listen to everything. I'll go through a wall for you, you know? And I feel, we're all works in progress in this as leaders, but we have to do a better job of it. And I think those people, if we look at those that are getting so much more out of their people, and their people are seeing so much of success and growth, and they're putting up numbers, and they're just like, there's this confidence and energy about them, I guarantee you there's a high element of that, of what I just talked about, that's present in that dynamic amongst that team that's maybe not on our teams. So that, to me, is how I get through to people. It's seeing them, it's acknowledging them, figuring out how they want to learn, learning my learner. And now I know, now it's incumbent upon me to deliver and find ways to tweak that and then move them from here to here. Because once they feel that, they get addicted to that movement. They get addicted to that evolution, and they're going to want to do more for themselves.
How do you, it's a heartbreaking moment when you see it, but they don't see it.
Yeah, it's like unrealized potential.
Or they just don't see what you see in themselves. And I always say, I get asked two questions, a lot as a leader, is what do you see right now is holding people back? And it's like 90% of it is themselves. Like, I coach a lot of loan officers. It's not a matter of marketing. It's not a matter of anything. It's a matter of they're stuck and they can't get unstuck. And the reason I work with the people that I worked with is because through that process, I saw something in them. I'm like, I targeted that individual. Like, you're the one that we need to have on a team, because you're going to make us better, and we're going to make you better. Yeah. But sometimes they don't see it, and that's the heartbreaking piece of it, And so I love like societies like yours where you really can bring people in and help them be seen from a different perspective. How have you seen your society transform people? Like, have you seen people really transform from where they started to where they're at now?
It's incredible because it's so young still, and it's still in such a developmental stage. But I've seen so many people start businesses. A good colleague who actually lives down here in this area, he left his steady job while his wife was pregnant with their first child, steady paycheck and benefits, to just start something of his own. He wanted to start a media company. And he did that while in the society. I've spent a lot of time with him. I'm a huge fan of his, supporting him, man, and I'm really incredibly proud of him. And he's built something very quickly because he was just so hell-bent, and I think a lot of that was that LFG mindset. Like, he just burned the boats. Like, failure isn't an option, right? And so he just did it. But I've seen a lot of that. That's one story, but a lot of new incredible businesses have been formed with people teaming up. Some people have left certain companies to go join forces, and they said, I should have done this years ago, but it was because of this community I've been able to do it. And I think, again, we're only scratching the surface because growth and evolution within humans is like an ongoing thing, right? We had an event that I held in San Francisco in February called the Better Human Project. And I gave everybody, during my keynote, what I thought was the formula for being a better human. I said, it's really simple. And I ask every podcast guest this when they're on my podcast, which is that when you die, no matter how many people are at your funeral, whether it's 5 people, 500, 5,000, doesn't matter. Your kids, grandkids, maybe you don't have kids, maybe they're nieces, nephews, whatever. What is the one word you want them to remember you by, or what your life meant? Just one word. So I know what mine was, and I've shared it. Mine's kind. But I tell people, if you want to just be a better human, remember what that word is, be clear on it, burn it into your heart and your mind, and every day just move towards it. Even if you have a bad day or a bad week or a bad month where you've fallen off or regressed in your behavior, or things took over, or stress, or you just weren't being a good dude anymore. If you just get back on and refocus and just keep moving towards it. If you spend every day, however many days you have left on this earth, moving towards that one word, you'll be a better human. And that's a big core philosophy or a tenet of the society and the group, and what we want people to do.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I was thinking about it as you were saying, like, what would be my word? You know, and I've never really given that a lot of thought, and I love that. It forces you to take stock and, you know, really look at yourself in the mirror to figure out who you want to be.
Yeah.
And we're so busy charging forward that we don't think about that question. What have you learned in terms of, like, you approach we always approach these ventures with one idea in mind, and then it lands, it turns out to be something completely different.
Yeah.
So when you started the society, and then you look at LFG, what it is today, what does it evolve to, and what have you learned from that?
I mean, I've learned that, like, I've learned that I am so moved by just everyday stories from people, you know, and continue to be. And I never cease to be amazed at how indomitable spirit and how great, and you know, they don't get much credit for it, but how actually genuinely good most human beings actually are. The media and the broader world would lead you to believe that it's actually the opposite, but no, I fundamentally disagree with that. I think most all humans you come into contact with are inherently good people. They get lost in their own way sometimes and get off track, and sometimes they so far off track that they ultimately change and turn into something else, but most people are really good. So that, for me, and seeing the evolution of this and seeing that from people, like, I learned so much from others. I really do. People say, like, I benefit so much from this group. They don't realize I actually benefit the most.
That's what I was thinking.
I benefit the most from everybody's stories, like this community of people and everyone having each other's backs. And I tell everyone that's in the group, I'll do anything for anyone that's part of this community. I'll do anything for you. If you need me at some time or whatever, and I may be writing a check there that I can't cash at some point because of my own limited capacities and, you know, having a family and time and bandwidth and resources, but I'll help anybody out because I have to lead by that kind of example. And also that's not any sort of unfamiliar walk for me. That's how I live life anyways. But I want everyone else to do it. But I want them to know that I'm just as inspired by them. So that's really been the thing where it's landed, that I had no idea where it would end up. And it's continuing to grow. I mean, we're only getting started. It was first meant to just start as this great community focused on personal growth and some business, and we're going to meet once a month, and it's probably going to explode with numbers. It exploded with some numbers, and then it kind of plateaued. And then I think we really needed to find this purpose and really defining how and why this is still so different from everything else that's out there. And it's also not meant to compete with anything else. There are people you've participated in some. There are a lot of people who are part of other masterminds, just like I am.
Yeah,
I got on.
I'm in one mastermind. I go on that one. There's a bunch of people from my mastermind. Like on the I thought it was awesome.
I think a lot of like-mindedness actually travels and migrates
yeah.
in those groups, which tells you that you're around the right people.
Yeah.
But it's meant to be something complementary that way. So that's been what's beautiful about it.
I love that. And a couple more questions before we wrap, and because I want people to know how to get a hold of you, right? So I want you to be able to share that. But Arjun, right? At Arjun Dingra.
At Arjun Mortgage.
At Arjun Mortgage on Instagram.
Instagram is the best way.
Is the best way. By the way, he has like 18.7 thousand followers or something like that, something crazy. And by the way, what's crazy about it is you just started over one day.
Yeah.
And then you've already grown even further than where you were, initially. And so congrats to you on really building an audience, which it's telling you, like, the consumers and the people in the industry, know who you are, they trust you, they like you, and they continue to engage with you. But, for those that are out there that are looking for a community to be a part, reach out to Arjun, because I will, vouch for this, that there is no better human that can help you from a mentorship perspective. And if you're looking for a community of like-minded people that you want to get just better as a human being, he's putting people in front of you to help you, get that. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about was, you and I were talking one day about really just about not just mental health, but health. And as we get older, we're manufacturing energy in a different way. And you had mentioned to me that you had stopped drinking, and I'll share this quick story with you. Part of the thing with the Forward Mastermind that I got out of it was I started to surround myself, or started to introduce myself to people who had stopped drinking. Mm-hmm. And it was like events like those events where I drank the most, or where like it was, I drank because I didn't have a confidence level to go into rooms and really feel at peace with myself for whatever reason. That's for your podcast, right? Yes. But on that piece of it, I would drink, and it would like help me get comfortable in those spaces. And one would turn into two would turn into three, and then I'm hungover right the next day, and probably regretted a few things I said. But one of the things I realized was that it wasn't really pushing me forward in my career either. And then I stopped. Mm-hmm. And when I stopped, a lot of things opened up in my world, and my eyes opened up, my brain space opened up, all these things happened. What was it like for you?
So this was during the pandemic, mm-hmm. because my wife and I, who would enjoy wine, mm-hmm. I used to love a good glass of wine. I said it like it was yesterday or something. It's been so long. So we drink wine with dinner. Mm-hmm. We'd open up a bottle and have a glass that could easily turn into a glass and a half for each other, and that's the whole bottle. But when you have a newborn, as you remember back in the day, man, like, that is not the time to be dulling your senses. You're already sleep deprived. You're already stressed. It was the pandemic, so it was kind of stressful with all the uncertainty. We're stuck at home. Can I go to work or not? Like, it was just a weird time. So she decided that she's like, I'm done, at least for a bit, but it ended up turning into a state of permanence because I can't be tired. Like, I'm already tired. Mm-hmm. I'm getting up with the baby. Like, the last thing I need to do is be more tired or just like out of it, brain fog, whatever. So she stopped. So I didn't have anyone to drink with or to enjoy wine with when I'd come home from work. Even during the pandemic, I'd open up a bottle of wine, I'd pour a glass, I'd have it with my dinner, and normally I'd pour her a glass so the bottle would go to waste. And we live in Sausalito, which is very close to Napa and Sonoma. We had some nice wine.
Good wine, yeah.
I was literally opening up a $100 bottle of wine for one glass and then throwing the rest away the next morning. Like, okay. So I started doing it less and less, and then what happened is I lost the taste for it. I completely lost the taste for it. But that loss of taste for it was completely cemented down in a moment on New Year's Eve at that time, because we were here in Phoenix. We were staying at the Princess. And we went to New Year's with my best friend and his now fiance. And he brought some other friend who was a wealth advisor and his wife. And they were much older. Their kids were raised, but he was out with him and he just came along with us. And I had my daughter who was, I think, 1 at the time.
Okay.
Or maybe a little less than 1. And I sat next to this guy at dinner at New Year's. Mm-hmm. And I was holding my daughter, and he was playing with her, and he was, he said he had 2 daughters himself, and I only had the 1 at the time, and you could tell that he was remembering the good days, right? Like so many parents do whose kids are raised. And then the waiter takes our drink orders, and he ordered a glass of champagne, I think, or something, and then I just said, I'm going to do a Diet Coke. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, And then the guy he leaned over. He goes, "You're not drinking? It's New Year's Eve. You're not having anything." I go, "You know what? I'm honestly contemplating, like, I think I'm pretty much done."
Yeah.
You know, because my wife doesn't anymore. I don't have anyone to drink with. And I don't know, I'm seeing a lot of health benefits from it. I sleep better. Like, my dinner bill's much cheaper.
Yeah.
You know, all these things. And he said, "I'm going to tell you something right now, man, because I just feel like you need to hear this. But I have 2 daughters that I'm close to, and they're raised. But I can't even begin to tell you the amount of regret I have over how many Saturdays and Sundays when they were little, when they were this age and older," he was pointing at my daughter, "that all they wanted to do was play with me. And I was too hungover to get up. I couldn't get off the goddamn couch." And he says, "I'll never get that time back." As soon as he said, that's another punch to the chest moment. I said, "I'm fucking never touching it again."
Done.
I will never, the regret in this man's eyes, and I'm still close to him today because we do work together. He's a wealth advisor. He sends me clients. He himself is a client. The regret in this man's eyes and the sorrow and just like the shame, I don't know, it like burned me.
Yeah,
like, it's etched into my soul. Like, I can still see it. And I just said, I never, ever want to feel like that.
Did you just that was it?
I was it. I was like, I was already pretty much done. I hadn't really touched it. It had been like several months, but I was still like, maybe one day I'll have a glass. Like, I hadn't declared it as a state of permanence. I said, I'm fucking finished. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, this guy just did it for me at that point. Now, you and I have this commonality, and a lot of people sometimes hear this like, "Oh, you guys think you're better than everyone because you don't drink." I have nothing against anyone who wants to drink
not at all,
and enjoy themselves. I made that choice because of conversations like that I had in my life, and also just health reasons, and because I want to live to well beyond 100. And I know I increase my odds of doing that if I give up alcohol, right?
100%, man.
But I also found out that my thing with alcohol, for everyone it's different, right? Whether it's a social crutch, it's for anxiety. Mine was this, it's my sweet tooth. I loved wine because of the sugar, because I know this when I gave it up, my Diet Coke intake went through the roof because I was craving it. And then we had to reconcile that, you know, a lot of deconstructive therapy there. For not drinking so much Diet Coke. But for everyone, it's different. And you got to kind of figure that thing out. And whether you come to that realization on your own or not, or you do it socially and in a healthy way, so be it. To each their own. I have nothing against it. Like I said, I used to enjoy a lot of wine myself, and I'm sure there's lots of people that do. But for me, that was kind of the moment. And it kind of has changed life in a lot of ways. I also feel like it's setting an example for both of our daughters now.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah, that their parents don't have to drink to have a good
think
time.
about it. I mean, if you grow up around alcohol all the time, then most likely you're going to drink alcohol, and the chances of you having a problem with it skyrocket, right? But if you grow up where, you know, you didn't do it, there's immediately like I don't have to, right? It just changes everything.
No, and we're kind of like the odd parents. And like, since I've done it, and you probably recognize this too, because I found Thomas in the mass. Like, there's so many. We kind of like its own secret society,
brotherhood,
or brotherhood or fraternity. But you start to come into contact. But I've noticed this: every high functioning person that is highly influential, I will find that that's the common denominator. They don't drink.
Yeah.
And for a lot of them, when I've asked, they're like, I can't dull my senses. I'm doing too many important things to be able to afford, even for a half a day or for an hour, that my senses are dulled or compromised, and I just won't do it. My goals are too big, or where I'm going is too important, or my objectives, or my health matters too much. Whatever it is, there's great conviction in that for why they don't. And I've just noticed that. But you start, when you're not doing it, you tend to start noticing so many other people. And then I feel like there's this radical acceptance of the lifestyle now. Like in the Bay Area, which is a generally health conscious area and space and community, every restaurant has as vast of a mocktail menu as they do a cocktail menu.
Yeah, it's so annoying.
And a lot of it's health.
It's so annoying because it's like equally as expensive.
Yeah, totally.
You know, like, come on, calm down.
Loaded with sugar and stuff, but it tastes great. But there's no alcohol in it. But they recognize that, like, and bars and alcohol consumption and this is a big story that people talk about economically for the city because of the bar tax and everything. Like, alcohol consumption is like categorically down. Yeah. Across the board, and when they're talking to young people, it's because many people are opting for a non-alcohol lifestyle.
It is a remarkable shift. Yeah. I am surprised, in as much as I travel in the areas that it doesn't exist. Like, you would think Utah would be like the mocktail capital of the world, and they don't have, like, most places don't even have like a non-alcoholic beer, you know. So it's the weirdest thing. But there's somebody who's listening right now who really needed to hear that message, which is why I asked you about it, because I think one of the things that I've noticed with my podcast and people that, and the discussions we've had around drinking and not drinking, I get the most interaction around that because there's somebody out there that's saying, hey, I too want to stop, or that resonated with me. But I remember when I was trying to stop, like it was already kind of formulating, like I'm thinking. I was so interested in understanding the people because Bepco is a really good example. Yeah. I thought that guy was a maniac. I thought he was a power drinker. I don't know what that guy was on, right? I was like, dude, this guy's on a level that I can't even hang with, right? And then he was like, no, I've been sober for like 20 years or something like that. You know, I was like, dude, I had no idea. And then tell me how you walk into the room with the confidence that you walk into that I lack. And just talking to him about it, you know, was just like, it opened up my mind to saying, if he can do it, why can't I? And if you can do it, Arjun, why can't I? You know, and so hopefully your story touches somebody who's right on that cusp of, should I stop? And I have little kids. You know, I too had the hungover mornings, and I too regret it. And I can't look back, but it's there, you know. And so I appreciate you sharing that story, man. You shared that story with me privately, and it means a lot. And it's the same every time. But I can't thank you enough for taking the time to fly out here, to take time away from your business and be on this podcast. And again, for those of you, Arjun Mortgage on Instagram, look him up, follow him, and talk to him about getting into society. DM him, you know, and I'll tell you this. I mean, you know, and he says this to everybody, DM me, he will talk to you. So most accessible person in mortgage that I know, and you're doing amazing things. So thank you for being on, brother.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate all you do for our industry and more importantly for our friendship.
Thank you, man.
Grown over these last couple of years, and I'm a lucky man for it. So thanks, brother. I love you.
Same, brother. Thank you. Love you too, man. Thank you, guys.